Excellency, former President John Dramani Mahama, and comrades gathered here, I also want to proceed by the protocols established by earlier speakers. I want to begin by asking a very simple question. And that is to say that after the passing of President Rawlings, there seems to be a meeting of minds about the fact that he was not only a great man, he was a great Ghanaian and great African. But what will be left of a great man if his great works are taken away from him? Everybody becomes ordinary without great works. It is the great works that make the difference between an ordinary man and a great man. So I want to ask another question as to how best, if we all know that President Rawlings was a great man, a great statesman, how best can we honor his memory? And my view is that the best way of honoring the memory of a great man is to continue doing what he would have done if he were to be alive. And that is why I think that this vigil is a very important contribution to his memory. We all know that every December 31st, the cadres and the NDC observe the beginning of the revolution by keeping vigil at these same grounds. So that is why the leadership of the party felt that the best way to start honoring our fallen hero is to begin with this vigil. President Rawlings, when he was alive, did not take pleasure in monuments being named after him. In fact, there were several occasions where he resisted the attempt to name monuments after him. His life also showed that he abhorred ostentatious living and ostentatious funerals and ceremonies. He kept reminding us that the best tribute we can keep to his memory is to hold dearly the principles of June 4th, based upon which the NDC was established. And so, my dear comrades, I believe strongly that the way to keep President Rawlings alive is to observe the principles of June 4th, to keep on practicing what he cherished most, and for my comrades in the Keda fraternity, for us to be reminding ourselves about the simple things he did to show that he cared for his fellow Ghanaian. President Rawlings showed in many ways that leadership is done by example. So even as he called for communal labor, he will not be sitting in his office. You will see him right there in the trenches, in the gutters of Nima, holding shovel and desilting gutters. Now, if you see the leader engaged in what he's admonishing the followers to do, who will not follow that leader? He also admonished us that in the past, it was sufficient to blame our offenses on directions from above and from our superiors. But June 4th taught us that it is wrong, and that every individual has a conscience, every individual has a duty to this nation. And so if you are given instructions which you consider to be injurious to the welfare of the state, you have the right to defy those instructions and to resist. And that was what came to be known as positive defiance. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe sincerely that what is missing in our democracy, which is creating problems of corruption, nepotism, and lack of transparency, is the lack of the spirit of positive defiance. We have all the institutions which are designed to check the abuse of power. Our problem is the attitude of the people who populate the institutions. If politicians order security men to turn the guns they have been armed with to protect the citizens into suppressing the citizens they are intended to protect, we expect that professional security men will say, no, sir. We have sworn to defend the citizens, so we are on the side of the citizens against the abuse of power. But how many of our security men can do that? If public servants are impressed upon by politicians to create opportunities for the politicians to loot the state resources, with the spirit of positive defiance, we expect the chief directors, and other public servants to say, no, sir. We have sworn to protect this nation. But what is happening today, the nepotism we are seeing, the corruption we are seeing, which in several ways can be said to be worse than what prevailed before the June 4th. It is happening because we have abandoned the important principle of positive defiance. So the best way to remember President Rawlings is for us to go back, not to be reciting the principles, but to find out what those principles mean to our democratic survival, and to pledge to live by them. The first few people who want to practice positive defiance may suffer for it, but if eventually they will prove to be martyrs who have sacrificed their lives to save this our democracy. Again, President Rawlings spoke constantly about accountability. Many of us just mention probity, accountability, without taking a step to find out what does accountability mean. There are a lot of people who think that when you talk about accountability, it's just about accounting for money. Money is part of it. But the most important way to hold ourselves accountable is to account for power and authority. Because we have been told by cadres, and we reduce it into singing, that power belongs to the people forever and ever. It is from this that we learn that anybody who finds himself in a position of power is just there in a position of trust. Hold the power, utilize the power to protect the masses, to seek the welfare of the masses, and to account to the people at the appropriate time as to how that power has been utilized. And one key principle means of holding people to account for how they use their power is through free, fair, and transparent elections. So if we are all preaching that we want to honor President Rawlings, let's honor him by keeping the structures that can hold people in power to account for how they use the power that has been entrusted into them by the masses. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I believe I have spoken enough since the demise of our founder. But I want to remind all of us that the little things that President Rawlings took pleasure in doing, we believe that his memory shall be better observed by doing some of the things that he took pleasure in doing during this time of mourning him. I have mentioned his pleasure in accompanying the masses to undertake communal labor. And I want to believe that the party followers throughout the country can best honor his memory by at least dedicating one day in your various constituencies, in your various branches, to undertake a massive clean-up exercise in remembrance of President Rawlings. On the eve of every June 4th celebration, we undertook route marches. If you don't know route march, you can turn it into this modern day keep fit, health walks, and so on. I want to believe strongly that one of the best ways to honor the memory of President Rawlings is for the party rank and file in their various branches, constituencies, and regions to undertake these route marches on the days to be determined by them according to their traditional calendars. I believe that if this is done, President Rawlings will be smiling wherever he is. And finally, the principles are good, but they remain impotent without our power to implement them. So if you are in opposition, you may have the best of ideas, but you cannot implement them. You can only be reciting them. So the best tribute we can pay to the memory of our founder is to accomplish the rescue mission. That will position us to implement the principles he lived and died for. He taught us that in every struggle, when comrades fall, we walk over their bodies to ensure that the mission is accomplished before we come to count the dead. So, ladies and gentlemen, be fired up by the temporary demise of our founder to win these elections and rescue this nation, Ghana, which was dear to his heart, from the very ills he has fought against all his life. Corruption today is worse than what he fought against on the occasion of June 4th. Nepotism today is worse than what occasioned the June 4th. So how can we say that President Rawlings has been a good man, he has been an African, and yet all the things he lived and died for will not be commemorated? We will abandon them and still pretend that we are honoring his memory. Ladies and gentlemen, let us walk our talk. Let us fight to come to power. Let us revisit the idea of June 4th becoming one of the national holidays. We can only do this when we are in power. In opposition, it cannot be done. If the current government thinks that President Rawlings was a great man, then let them honor his great works. And his great works can be remembered if we observe June 4th, at least for one day when the nation will stand still, go back and review what June 4th stood for, and to re-energize ourselves to live by the principles of June 4th. I thank you very much, and may President Rawlings live forever.
The General has spoken. Rescue mission, cleanup exercises, route marches. Let's do it for JJ. The man I'm going to call is a man that I've worked with for a very long time. He's totally committed to the rescue mission and the return of the NDC and JM to power. Our national chairman, Honorable Dr. Samuel Ofosu Ampofo, the winning chairman who is leading us to victory.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, John Dramani Mahama, the next President of the Republic of Ghana. Your Excellency, Professor J. Nana Opoku Ajiman, our incoming Vice President and the first female Vice President of the Republic of Ghana to be. Our former First Lady, and all protocol as established observed. The NDC party was founded on the vision of one person, His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings. It is upon his vision and his insights, his principles that ushered in the NDC in 1992. Today, he is physically no more with us, but the principle that he stood for will still live with us forever. One of the principles that His Excellency J.J. Rawlings cherished and lived and died for is the principle of social justice. And his definition of social justice is simply explained by the fact that as Ghanaians, we are all entitled to the basic essentials of life. In 1979, I was a student and I was traveling from Nkoko to Tiase in the Afram Plains district. It took us 14 hours to make that distance because the road was terrible, and if one of the mummy trucks that had gone to Afram Plains gets stuck on the road, all the rest of you will have to sleep until the next day. And that was the experience that I had when we had a holiday and I was traveling with some colleagues of mine to Tiase in the Afram Plains district. There was no electricity there. In his quest to ensure social justice, President Rawlings ensured that rural electricity or rural electrification was aggressively pursued, and all the nook and cranny of this country, he made sure that electricity was extended to every village, every community, and every town. That was his concept of social justice. President Rawlings felt that good drinking water is as good for the people in the urban and peri-urban communities as it is to the people in the rural areas. And so by that time, we only had the Ghana Water Company Limited, which was primarily responsible to ensure that good drinking water is extended to people in the cities and the towns. As a result of his principle of social justice, he realized that there was a need for the people in the rural community where I belong to also have good drinking water. And so he established the Community Water and Sanitation Agency, responsible for rural water supply. And as a result of that, President Rawlings was always excited when a borehole is constructed in a community. He travels from Accra to the community and commissioned the borehole because he realized that water is life. And if you give people water, you are giving the people social justice. You are establishing or practicing inclusiveness. So before he left office, he launched Water for All by the year 2000. Those of you who remember. This is the man who thought about the ordinary people. This is the man who identified himself with the wishes and aspirations of the ordinary Ghanaian. President Rawlings was worried about guinea worm to the extent that he embarked on an aggressive guinea worm eradication program. And today, as we speak, by the grace of God, guinea worm has been eradicated from our society, courtesy the vision and the policies of the man we are honoring tonight. President Rawlings believed in the adage, power to the people. And for that matter, through the principle of power to the people, he committed himself to decentralization and local government policies. Establish and increase the number of districts from 65 to 110, and make sure that the ordinary people are given voice in the various municipal, metropolitan, and district assemblies. He ensured that several people